Conjoint analysis. Have you ever heard this term anywhere, any place, in any of the research articles that you might have been reading or you might have been referring? Have you ever heard of this term? Any of you? Can you put it in the chat box, or you can unmute and always tell. So conjoint analysis basically is used for product design, and it is used to find out which of the product attributes are actually preferred by consumers or by respondents based on certain responses that they give to certain questions about consumer utility levels. And the conjoint analysis basically is used to understand what kind of product can be made with what kind of attributes. So you see the different models of, say, for example, cars or different varieties of products being made under the same brand. All right, so these are basically used or formulated using one of the tools or analytical methods used is conjoint analysis. So conjoint analysis is basically an output, which is a set of utility values. You will see some of the examples that I'll be quickly showing. For every kind of product variation or for every kind of combination of product attributes or characteristics, and the attribute level for that kind of an offer. And what happens is that the utility values need to be considered in order to understand which kind of utility is people looking at. So if you, for example, remember that in the measurement scales, we had looked at something called the constant sum scale, in which attributes or multiple attributes are listed for a particular type of a product or for a particular type of an object. And respondents are typically asked to give their views, their opinions about certain importances that they feel or they give to certain characteristics of products. Right. So when you talk about constant sum scale, there was, like, for example, we had discussed about a bathing soap, right? Or it could be, instead of bathing soap, it could be any particular product or object. And supposing you're going to allocate some points, say out of 100, among a set of attributes, you want to find out which are the attributes which people find important, right? So similar to that, taking it forward, we take on conjoint analysis basically to do a kind of computation of utility values for every kind of product variation. So conjoint analysis basically can be done for sample sizes of 1, that is basically taking it from a respondent and trying to find out what he or she is preferring, or taking it from a sample of a family and trying to understand what is their kind of preference. And you can do it across responses received from a set of people as well. All right, and it is used across industries. Like I was telling you, it is used for basically developing product formulations, different kind of models, different kind of varieties of products, different product pack sizes, different product pack formulations, all of that. So conjoint analysis attempts to determine the relative importance consumers attach to salient attributes and the utilities that they attach to the different level of attributes. The second point is that the information is derived from consumer evaluations of brand profiles composed of the attributes and their levels. So basically certain brands or certain characteristics might be mentioned, and the views of the customers are actually, or customers or respondents are actually elicited in order to understand how to take it forward to derive the analysis in a joint format. So you're trying to understand respondents' points of view as they have been presented with the stimuli, which consist of the attribute levels or the characteristics level. So the steps in conjoint analysis is as follows. You need to choose the product attributes, like, for example, what characteristic of the products are you really going to evaluate from consumer responses or people's responses. So it could be the size of the products or the different sizes, and you ask people to indicate their preferences. You can have different price levels and then ask people to indicate the different price levels that they prefer. You can have different kinds of models or different kinds of pack sizes, and you can ask them to indicate what kind of packs that they prefer. You can choose the values or options for each attribute. So different kind of variations can be there, and among the variations, for example, you could have 2, 3, 4 different sizes and ask people to indicate which size of the product that they prefer. You can have different price levels for the product and indicate that you would like to understand from the customer what kind of prices that they prefer. You can indicate what kind of models that they prefer. So it is about giving different options to customers and asking them to indicate their preference. So it is not just one attribute. So for example, we are not going to say that, yes, of course, it is a general belief that people would try to take value for money. So it's value for money is a generic statement. But when you say value for money, are people price conscious, or are they attribute conscious? Are they benefit conscious, or are they status conscious? Do they look at the social value of the product? Do they look at the social value of the brand? What is it that they really look at in a product when they are trying to buy a product or a brand per se? Because people don't buy really products, they buy really brands. Unless and until there are certain products which are going to be different, but they have similar kind of benefits, and which may not be very risky. Like we, for example, said about salt, low value items, which the packaged products would be similar across, whether it is a Tata salt or an Ashirwad salt, whatever it is, and there is not much of a risk value attached. But whenever you talk about something consumer product, like for example a shampoo or an electronics product, then there are certain kinds of risk attached. Electronic items, because of the reliability aspect, the lack of failure, or the probability of frequency of failure of an electronic item having purchased it, so the financial risk is there. Or the fact that once you make an investment, because of the high value nature of the electronic item, a person may not be able to replace that immediately after purchase, having known that, okay, fine, I don't like it, or people don't perceive that to be good. So before that purchase, that such kind of high value purchases like electronic items, brand does make a lot of difference. Similar to that, for example, a consumer non-durable product like shampoo, for example, I was saying, it does have a lot of risk aspect attached to it. So it's just not something like a detergent to wash hair, but in case that particular product is not very, what should I say, good, right? It could lead to the loss of hair, and people are very conscious about the treasures that they have, the head full of hair, which you don't want to lose because you used a cheap shampoo, or you used a brand which was not known by you, and it had some kind of harmful chemicals leading to the loss of hair. So such kind of products, so as compared to a detergent, say for washing utensils, okay, versus something like a shampoo for washing hair, these two products have different type of meaning to the customer, and therefore brand makes a lot of difference. So the brand name makes a lot of difference for selling these two kinds of products. And therefore it is important to understand what is the importance that customers give to purchasing products. Is it only price, or is it a combination of price, benefits, availability? What is it, right? So this is where we take the help of conjoint analysis to find out, are people really going to say, if it is consumer durable product or non-durable product, what model will people prefer, at what combination of price and features level, what different kinds of product models or packs should you have in the market so that you can cater to all kinds of customers. So right from, say, for the consumer non-durable products or consumer products, like for example soaps, shampoos, oils, right, stuff like that, what you have is, you can have a sachet pack of say 5 ml, all right, or you can have a biscuit being packed for in sets of 2s or 4s. Like for example, if you're traveling in the train, you will often see that the IRCT gives you packs of biscuits, which are 2 biscuits packed on, right? So basically you could have sachet packaging, as well as you could have bulk packs going into 1 kg, 1 liter, 5 kg, 5 liter, 10 kgs, 10 liters, and all of that, right? So what are these combinations? So what kind of product packaging? So that is basically, it goes way back into your marketing mix kind of a thing. So any kind of product that is going to be sold, any kind of offers that is going to be made, even for example in HR, you want to find out the combination. What kind of a skill set do you really need to have in your company so as to be able to have a really good productive workforce? You also need to understand what kind of a combination of the human resources, compensation or non-compensation related elements should you have in your company, which will ensure that you can retain the right talent, right? This can also be used for financial sector as well. So financial services, or in the finance field per se, what combination of an investment can make something really lucrative for a set of investors, right? So you're talking about different combination of product utility levels, which is preferred by the customer and which can make some meaningful sense out of the, proposing the product for some kind of an usage. So the value of relative utility is assigned to each level of an attribute, which is actually called the part worth utilities. We'll see the calculation, and the combination with the highest utilities is the one that is actually indicated to be preferred. All right, so what you have on your screen is an indication of that itself. So if you observe that, there are certain attributes, and if I can have the spotlight given here. So what do you see here on the left hand side? That there are certain attributes like life of the product, or the price level of the product, and the color of a product. So for example, you're trying to find out like what kind of a product can be suitable for a particular set of customer, and this is something that is indicatively brought from the one single kind of a customer. So somebody has actually indicated certain preferences, right? So certain preferences for 3 levels of life of the products, a product which will survive for 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years, price level of 50 rupees per liter, 60 rupees per liter, and 70 rupees per liter. Color could be green, blue, cream color, right? So when we talk about this, so we are talking about 3 levels of life characteristics, 3 levels of price, 3 types of colors. And the part utility is mentioned in points. So anything which has got a negative point means that the customer is not really preferring that. Anything which is 0 and above, that is positive, will have a positive indication, that is a liking. So therefore the life element, the 3 years level, has been given a utility level of minus 7.11, and 4 years 0.11, 5 years is 7. For price levels, so it is not that only about the pricing is the person price conscious, but this input is going to be taken along with other attributes, right? So what are the attributes that are going to be taken? 50 rupees per liter, the part utility evinced by the customer is 5.44. 60 rupees per liter has been given as 0.11, that is negative, that means it's not really light. And 70 rupees per liter has been given as 5.33. So it's very difficult to make out whether person really likes a 50 rupees, 60 or 70, but then 60 rupees is something that people are not preferring because they've indicated a negative kind of a part utility marking. So apparently it is 50 rupees per liter, which is obviously the price conscious kind of a mindset is coming out, right? And the color indication for green, it is given as 3.11 positive. Blue has been indicated as minus 0.88, and cream color has been given as 2.23, positive 2.23, right? Now, what do you need to do? You need to find out the range of utility for the attributes across the 3 levels, right? Now, this could have 4 levels also. It could have 5 levels also, right? I hope you're able to see the spotlight there. The pricing also could have been 3, 4, or 5 levels. So whatever is the levels that you have for each attribute, you need to calculate the range of that utility, which means range is what? The maximum minus the minimum. So you will calculate the maximum for each of the levels, that is the attribute. What is the maximum level? Minus the minimum utility indicator. So in this case, for example, for life, it is 7 minus, what is the minimum utility here? Minus 7.11. All right. So it is 7 minus within bracket. That is why it is written as minus 7.11, which basically means that once you open the bracket, you know that it will become an additive factor. So this is 7 plus 7.11, which is basically 14.11, which means life aspect of the product has a range, has a utility value of 14.11. Now let us see what is the utility level of the price element for the product. All right, so price, the utility levels indicated are 5.44, minus 0.11, and 5.33. So now you need to find the range of the utility levels, which is again the maximum utility minus the least utility, the minimum utility. So what is the maximum utility here? It is 5.44 minus the negative one, that is 60 rupees per liter, had a minus 0.11, right? So it will be within bracket minus 0.11. So you need to put the absolute, the value should be indicated along with the magnitude. So is it a positive or a negative amount? So in effect, it will become 5.44 plus 0.11. All right, so it becomes 5.55. And for color, for example, green has green, blue, and cream color have been given, and the utility levels are given there. The range of the utility, again, the maximum and the minimum has to be subtracted. So maximum minus minimum, 3.11 minus of minus 0.88, which is basically going to be 3.99. So in effect, what you're going to see is what is the combination of the utilities that the customers have preferred. Here in this case, it is a response from a single customer. So you're going to find out that it is something that they have mentioned, that life has a utility of 14.11, absolute number. Price has 5.55 and color has 3.99, which means the first thing that the customer wants out of this product would be the how much is the economic life of the product. So that is of importance because it has been indicated with 14.11. The second attribute which is important for the customer is price. So along with the features, along with the benefits, the second most important thing for the customer is going to be price. And the third could be the color. So third color, how did we find out? So we found out that the range of the utility in descending order is price, life is first, second is price, and third is color. All right. So the life of the product is most important. The examples or the explanations are again given in these slides so that you can refer back, and that's what I've been telling you. Price is the second most important attribute with a utility range of 5.55, and color is the third most important attribute with a utility range of 3.99. So in effect, what you're going to do is you will combine the utility. So total utility of any combination can be calculated by adding the utility levels of each attribute level chosen, which is what we did here. We are calculating the entire attributes here. Best combination would be to add the highest utilities of each attribute. So that could be the best combination. And individual attributes, you could find out what is the difference in the utility with the changes in the levels. This also can be and then the leaves, and then photosynthesis is happening, and so many things are created, and finally the tree or that shoot will give out flowers and fruit. So the fruit of the tree is basically symbolic of something which is in parallel, can be correlated to the research report out of a research endeavor. So the research report is something which is a written document basically. So every professional research must actually be able to turn out a research report in a format which will document what has been the process followed in the research, from where has it started, what was conducted, what is the outcome, and what is the conclusions or the inferences going forward. So research report is basically a written document or oral presentation based on a written document basically that communicates the purpose, scope, objectives, hypothesis, methodology, findings, limitations, and finally recommendations of a research project to others. Have you ever seen a research report? All of you would have done some kind of projects in your undergraduate studies, right? Because all of you are graduate program. So you must have done some projects in your undergraduate studies. Do you remember the research report that you had, the project report, the dissertation report that you would have done in your, it could be a BE, BTech, BBA, BSc, whatever was your degree that you have followed, BCom. So if you remember the dissertation report or the project report, it had some kind of a format, right? So basically it is a summary of the findings, and it is just not a record of what is only happening. So from beginning to end, the researcher will create a kind of a written document. So this is like a technical report. It is not a news report. It is something which is very, very formal, more professionally done, and it requires a little bit of systematic effort in drafting the report, because the research report must not necessarily be something which is summarized form. It has to be chapterized, and the chapterization will necessarily follow from the dictates of the sponsoring organization who's actually initiating the research, or for whom the research has been conducted. So basically most of the research reports basically need to have certain characteristic, which is no matter how much of technicality has gone into the research conduct, or no matter how much of quantitative or statistical techniques have been used in the research report, finally the purpose is that all these are methodologies and methods and techniques used for certain purpose, and therefore the research report that comes out of undergoing such a stringent and robust process is basically that the research outcome or the outcome based on the research conducted should have accuracy. There should be a simplicity in the research report, that no matter who is reading the report, the target audience must be able to understand the language, the meaning, the content, and the intent of the report. So even if it is a very technically oriented research which has been done, no matter how much of sophisticated statistical tools would have been used, finally, when the outcome of the report is to be indicated, it must be indicated in simple, concise, correct English language, which should be understandable by anyone who's reading the report. And when I say anyone, I'm not, of course, meaning anybody who's just walking on the road, but the target audience of that research report. So the target audience could be students in that field. It could be the company's own staff, the department which is conducting the research, their staff who may not necessarily understand all nuances of research or all nuances of quantitative and qualitative research methodology techniques. But people should understand what is the meaning, what is the outcome of this research report, right? It could also mean the public. So a company might be conducting a research report. Finally, that research report also needs to be perhaps disclosed to the public, right? So the public must be able to also understand, in effect, in gist, what is the meaning out of the conduct of the research report. Therefore, the simplicity should be there. There should be conciseness or brevity, that you should be able to create the report not in a very lengthy, winding format, but it should be really, short. But at the same time, brevity or conciseness must not indicate that you skip portions of the valuable aspect of research which has been done. So you need to ensure that you are able to formulate the research report in such a manner that it is not going to talk about certain things repetitively, but you should be able to convey the meaning, the outcome, the results of the report in a very, very concise manner without taking too much of unnecessary jargon or putting unnecessary jargon into the paragraphs and the content, right? So using simple language and trying to convey it in as short a method as possible without compromising the content of the research. The next is the comprehensibility and the readability. So the understanding ability, once people are able to read it, so in the language in which the report has to be made, of course, globally, when you consider research reports, they need not be done only in the English language. In countries where English happens to be the official language, research reports necessarily must also have a English translation done of the research report. But should there be a necessity to conduct a research and the research report has to be made in a local language per se, then the local language translated version of the research report must also necessarily be made available. And if this research report has to be accessed by the global audience, then the research report also must be naturally translated into multiple languages as would be the requirements. And when such translation is required, as I have told you before, you need to ensure that the translation process follows a systematic and objective method of ensuring that translators who are bilinguists minimal, that means, for example, if you're using English language as the primary language for writing the report and you need to, translate it into Mandarin, right, Chinese language, or you need to translate that English report into a French language, then you must use translators naturally who should be at least bilinguals, meaning somebody who will understand English very well and Mandarin well, so that we'll be able to translate your English report into the Mandarin language. And you must have a translator, again, a second translator who should be able to see that Mandarin version of the research report and who will also be expert in English and should be able to check with the English version and see whether the research report content, intent, meaning, purpose, everything is retained in its entirety. Similar thing, for example, the second language I was talking about, French. So you want to translate your report into French language. Again, the same thing. Translator who is actually basically well versed in both English and French must be used to translate the original English document into the French language. And a second translator may be used in order to check for the objectiveness, in order to check for the correctness of the translation. So a second translator who's again equally well versed in at least the French language and the English language equally must be used, so as to be able to check for the authentic translation done of the original English report into the French language. Now the second translator will check the French translated version of the report and will try to translate it back and see, or check with the English report and see if there is any kind of gaps, discrepancies which are prevailing. All right. So unlike the questionnaire kind of a thing where we actually do not let the second translator see the original language version, in this case, the second translator would be given both the versions and to suggest or give inputs as to if there are any changes required in order to check for the veracity or check for the authentic nature or for any kind of discrepancies that can be spotted in the translated version of the research report. So this basically is to ensure that comprehensibility and readability is not sacrificed or is not compromised because of language issues. The next is about the reliability of the report. So how reliable, trustworthy is the report, and that would basically come out of the various instruments, the various rigorous research design that has been followed by the researcher and the disclosures that are there, the disclosure of the data, the fact that can the data sources be checked. So all of these need to be there in the research report to ensure that these things are actually possible. The other is also to conduct a plagiarism check, which is basically to find out the similarity of the content of the research report with other published research reports. So ideally, research reports must not have high levels of plagiarism. And when we talk about plagiarism, it is the fact that you would unnecessarily try to stake a claim of others' intellectual property. So trying to claim or trying to write something which has actually been written by someone else and try to take the claim as if it is your own, that is a plagiarism, and that is a serious crime in the intellectual knowledge or the knowledge domain. So one must in any kind of conference that you would wish to go and present your research report, or even if you have to submit your research report for any academic degree in any university, any institution of higher learning, and also if you have to submit your research report to any organization, the veracity of that would be one of the elements by which we check for the credibility, the truthfulness, the reliability of that is to do a plagiarism check with some authentic softwares. Turnitin software is one such software, plagiarism check software, which is globally used, and they have in their database millions of published documents, which are actually there in some of the most prestigious, most reputed libraries and publishing houses across the world. So Turnitin is a very, very robust and very reliable software, and it is actually subscribed by the institutions for a price, and you cannot get it free. Online free softwares are not reliable plagiarism software. So therefore, reliability of any research report which has been checked for plagiarism only from online free softwares are not actually taken as trustworthy or reliable. Another software which is used for plagiarism check is Urkund, which at the universities you will often find Urkund there, because this is something which University Grants Commission, UGC, has given to all the universities for ensuring that universities can use this plagiarism check software to check for different research reports, dissertation reports of their students before the same is submitted. All right, so reliability aspect of that has to be checked at a lot of levels. And the economy of the report must be such that, of course, when you're doing a business research, and the business research report should be such that the amount of investment that has been made for the conduct of the research, the cost must be less than what it is actually for the benefit of the research, right? So in effect, what basically it means is that the value of the research outcome must be more than the cost invested in conducting the research. The return on investment must be higher, right? So that is how the research report must also fall in line. And so the timelines indicated for the research should be there, so that people who read the research report or they refer the research report should be able to understand in which time frame has the research been conducted, so as to understand the relevance, the periodicity, or how old or new is this research finding. So extremely old research reports may not hold valid for a current phenomenon or for a contemporary phenomenon, right? Timelines, therefore, is very important to be indicated. When did the research start? When was the data collected? How many times the data was collected? When was the last time that the data was collected? For how long was the data collected? all of that, because some of the times the recency effect, the the past effects, or if there is a lot of time lag which is happening between the data that is collected from the first respondent, and what was the time, and the data that was collected from a set of respondents towards the end of the data collection, what was the timeline. So many kind of implications can come in for the data collection. Also need to understand whether the exploratory research was conducted prior to the main study. If so, how long before was it conducted? If there is a pre-testing of the questionnaire that was to be done, has it been done? For how long was it conducted? So it should not be that you conducted a pre-testing for one day and you started with the final questionnaire the next day, things like that. So like a project, handling, project management, the timelines must be indicated, and it should indicate fairly the realistic timelines followed for the conduct of the research. And that also needs to come out in the main report. The logical content and the completeness. So logical content means scientific method of conduct of the research. Has it been done? Was it conducted in a systematic manner? Was it having a set of objectives, right? So did the research that was conducted and is being projected in the report, has this research actually followed the research process or not completely, which means has it been done with the steps that were required to be followed? Because research is a systematic and objective method of collecting some data for a certain purpose and analyzing and interpreting that data for further dissemination of that outcome of that research for purposes of usage in the business domain. So for example, you would want to understand whether before the research itself was conducted, was there a research problem identification stage? What led to the research problem identification stage? What is the background of that? What was some of the ways in which the researcher or the researching the group went about understanding the research problem, which means that you need to recall back the first stages that we talked about. Was it a non-trivial question? Was it a question that was worth researching upon? Why was it necessary? What was the urgency of doing this research? What was the uncertainty facing the business? So all of that. So it is basically, perhaps you can encapsulate that in the first chapter of your research report, right? And the next step of the research process basically would be to develop an approach to the problem, which all of you know. So is it also or has it also been done, and is it getting reflected in the research report, which basically would mean perhaps the second chapter of the research report, which could focus on the review of literature. Or if you're talking about a company, you talk about the profile of the company and the industries and give a detailed brief about why this particular research needed to be done with the research problem. The research design comes and the third stage of the research process, and therefore perhaps your third chapter of your research report could be looking at the research design. So the different research designs, whether an exploratory research design was used, was required or not, was it used for the research, what were the conclusive research methodology that was used, what were the descriptive research process that was used, any experimental methods were used or not, what were the sampling techniques that were used, why was a certain sampling technique used and why not something else, those kind of things, the measurement instruments, what were they used. So this becomes the third chapter of your research report, basically to talk about the research design, or the third aspect of the research report, if not chapters. So the completeness of the research report will be in such things. So third thing about the research report being the research design. The fourth thing about the research report should deal with how the data collection was planned, right? How the data collection, meaning qualitative data, quantitative data, if both were used, how were they conducted, how were they collected, was there any kind of data collection plan done, was there any kind of field editing done, were there data collection, after that the data analysis plan done, how was the data analysis actually done in the research, what kind of data analysis has been conducted, so if there are multivariate techniques, what are the techniques used, why were they used, all of that, and then going back and forth with the type of data collected, nominal, interval, ratio, ordinal scale data, and the type of multivariate techniques that were used. So you try to give in those kind of things in that part of the research report to indicate the data interpretation, analysis and interpretation of the research report, because basically you're now going to go into the last part of the report, which will be for recommendations out of your interpretation, right? So data analysis and interpretation having been done, What is the outcome of the report? So what? So you need to talk about how the data analysis and interpretation is actually helping in the conclusion of the research problem. That is how, or what is a solution that you get out of the problem at hand? What is your recommendation? Why is your recommendation what it is? So does it logically flow from the interpretations that you are giving? Does it flow from the data analysis that you have done? Does it really flow from the kind of data that you have collected? Which means if you would have done an exploratory and a conclusive research, does it really flow from that? How reliable is the data that you have collected? What are the Cronbach alpha scores? What are the validity aspects? What is the kind of input that you're giving to the business community or to the company based on your data analysis and interpretation? So the last part of the report is actually very critical, which needs to be, you cannot just cut and paste or copy and paste statistical tables and put it in the report. The last part of the report is basically going to be descriptive in order to tell that what is the outcome of the research report out of the methodologies, the tools, the techniques that have been used. And finally, it's like a gift wrap. You buy the gift, you put it in a box, you try wrappers, and then you finally try to wrap it nicely with ribbons so that the entire package looks very neat, clean, and very, very nice to be given to someone. You don't want to have a report which is shabby, which is full of grammatical errors, which is full of language errors, syntax errors, doesn't look professional. So these kind of things must not be. It's a professional technical report that has to be complete in its nature, right from the beginning to the end. It's like something that has to be presented. And this main research report will have further kind of things. For example, if somebody is to do a presentation, they will convert main portions of that into a PPT. Right? You can make an abridged form. You can create an abstract of the report, which is a shortened version of the entire report, say in 2 pages. So your entire report might go up to anywhere between 70 to 200 or 300 pages, but your abstract will just be, say, about 2 pages worth about 500 or 700 words, which is like in the gist, what does it mean? And the same research report might have to be given in the form of an oral presentation, which means people would want to know in different meetings and conferences or in any kind of review meetings, they would want to know, so what was happening? So what did you find out of conducting the research? Which means your main report might be there, but people may not want to go and examine the, say, the 200-page report that you have created, but they would want to know in an oral presentation supported by visual elements like charts, graphs, tables, all right, in the form of few slides. They would want to understand in essence, what does the research report talk about? So the research report, if you go into the next part of it, so the importance of the research report cannot be undermined. It is one of the most critical part of the conduct of research, and presentation of the same is also an integral part of the research report preparation. And the onus or the responsibility of the presentation also lies upon the researcher or the team which is conducting the research, because they will have all the data, all the sources, all the materials which have been used in the research. So for the following reasons, the report and its presentation are important parts of the management research project. So any business research, because business research is being conducted in order to ensure that the research outcome helps in reducing uncertainty, isn't it? So when you want to reduce uncertainty in your business decisions, the business management unit would really want to understand that if I am going to base a decision out of the input of the research, I very well must understand what is the robust methodology followed based on which the research is giving me these kind of indicative decisions to be done. Right? You don't want to take a decision based on flimsy report. You don't want to take a decision based on forged data. You don't want to take a decision based on fake data that has been analyzed. So that is why the robustness of the data collection process, the robustness of the research design, the professionalism employed in the research process, the research ethics that was employed in getting the research data becomes very, very important as part of the whole project of the research. All right. So why is the research report therefore very important? Number one, they are the tangible products of the research report. After all the deliberations that has happened over weeks and months, the research report finally is the tangible thing, something which people can see, they can feel it, they can understand that there is an outcome of it. Many a times these research reports also have to be made in the form of a printed out copies, hardbound books kind of a thing should be submitted. Of course, there are soft copies also to be submitted in the form of, recording it in or what should I say, saving it in CD files or making PDF files and then uploading it in whichever portal is required. So second point is management decisions are guided by the report and the presentation. So it's very important that the report and the presentation is done after the research, because management decisions are going to be guided by that. Third point is the involvement of many managers in the project is limited to the written report and the oral presentation. So many of the managers who will now become the beneficiaries of this research report will only have the research report to be guided by, because the research team and the business decision-making team might be two different sets of team. In case you have business decision makers who are also researchers themselves, they would also tend to have this separate silos or a kind of separate units, wherein the research, how it was conducted, will now have to be analyzed in a very dispassionate manner, in a very objective manner, in order to understand that finally what is the report that is indicative in the written format, and out of what is being presented, what is the takeaway for management. In effect, what is the takeaway? The management's decision to undertake research in the future or to use the particular research supplier again will be influenced by the perceived usefulness of the report and the presentation. So in case you're working with a research firm, then the client continuity, or you might say the relationship of the customer and the research consultant would depend on the usefulness of the research report. And after the conduct of a particular research project, the outcome that you leave behind with the client is your research report. So it's very important as a research organization that the research report that you leave behind, which is like a permanent document, whether it is a PDF in their soft archival system, information network system, it is in the library as a PDF file, or you are submitting hard copies of the research report in a bound format. The research report finally is a permanent document of proof of the research work that has to be submitted by the researcher to the business decision maker. And this permanent document, so you might talk many things, people might forget, you might say many things which people might not recollect, but what you submit, what you put in hard copy, or what you're going to put in the form of a permanent document will always remain in the organization's memory. All right. Of course, nowadays, even, oral presentations are not anymore, forgettable, because people are going to record the webinars, people are going to record the video conferences, people are going to record the online meetings. So these online recorded meetings also become tangible proofs of whatever you're talking about the research. All right. And this will further be referred in the future for both good and bad. Good, because if you've done a really good work, the good work will speak for itself and no one can take away the credit from the researcher. And if the decision guided by the research report also yields good results, it would be a kind of a feedback of the loop. That is, the researcher or the researching team will be called back, or will always be relied upon to do the management research time and again to feed into the information, valuable information loop for the decision making. All right. But if the research report was not good, then it will also lead to the fact that management will decide we may not be able to continue with the same research supplier, but we'll have to go with some other researcher because the research conducted last time was actually not valid, was not really useful, was not somewhere, it was not, giving the right kind of inputs from the market. So the types of research report, in case we want to understand, because we keep talking about the fact that report is very important to make, and it is very, very, very important that the research report is understandable by the audience, by the final stakeholder who has got to use the report, right? Now, any research report contains descriptions on methodology. Research report should contain results obtained. Results obtained means also, finally, the recommendations which the researcher is actually making. Please understand, business research is something where the researcher is going to not only understand what is the information requirement for the decision making, but is also going to ensure that the information that is going to be used by the decision maker, the researcher must be able to translate that into forms of questions that based on which data can be collected from objects or from people and respondents in order to be able to provide that information. So the researcher needs to be someone who should be understanding the business scenario, the business dynamics, the business operations, and should also be very, very proficient in research methodology, and therefore should be able to understand what is the information required. So a little bit of a vision outward, vision into the future of what the decision maker wants, and then getting it back to the present scenario to say that if I want to have that much of information for my decision maker, what is the way, which means the methodology, by which I shall collect the data, which means what format of data should I be collecting, and how I should be analyzing the data, which means data by itself is not going to be useful. I need to analyze it in such a way that it is something meaningful for the decision maker. So this is the role of a researcher. He has to or she has to ensure that they take that outside in view, understand what the decision maker wants, get it translated back into the research information requirements, then deliberate upon using his or her knowledge about research methodology to ensure that they understand how the data collection process must begin with. And it is not that you're going to start the data collection process right away, but there is a methodology by which secondary data must be accessed to see whether existing data can be used and to what extent new data must be collected, because cost is involved, right? Secondary data also, getting secondary data is not free of cost. That also involves a lot of cost in terms of time, effort, manpower, right? Accessing the right portals, right sources, right? So you need that effort. So that has to be systematically done. Secondary data to be accessed, talking to experts, deliberating upon the research design. All this has then to be thought by the researcher. This has to come out in the research report. All right. So the basic orientation of a research report depends on the audience. Before writing the report, the researcher must know his or her audience. Like I said, know your target audience, meaning who is going to read your research report. As I said, while you need to know your audience, you need to keep it simple and straight. At the same time, it's not that people, just randomly simple people walking on the road is going to read your research report. No, please understand that there is a particular audience, which means people in the organization, in the department where you are going to conduct the research report, the decision maker who has entrusted you to conduct the research, the sponsors of your research, they are going to read the research report. And of course, as part of their public disclosure, they might also put up this research report in their websites for public viewing if required. All right. So the audience is very important, because based on the audience, you will understand the level of comprehension that is required to understand the report. What kind of technical words should you use, and what kind of jargons should you avoid? What kind of ways in which the final research report should be projected, such that despite all the technicalities and the sophisticated tools and methodologies used, finally the research report must be understandable by an audience. All right. So the last thing is, the researcher may have to make assumptions about the composition, background, and interest of the target readers. So there are different types of research reports. Technical report is something which is suitable for a target audience, which is basically for ensuring that the report can be technical in nature for a target audience like researchers, research managers, or other people familiar with the technicalities of the research. They can read the research report and verify the robustness of it. So when you do projects and all of that, or dissertation, and you want to get your degree, before that you have to go for a viva. So during the viva, what happens, the main research report hard copy will have to be submitted, both in the form of hardbound copy as well as a PDF version. But also in the report, when you're talking, the people in the viva board, the oral examination board will be composed of professors, faculty members, researchers, industry experts, people who understand that domain, right? And they are going to question the researcher, the student researcher, or the professional researcher about things that they have done or he has done in the research. So technical report will have to be suitable for this audience. So therefore you need to be able to balance the use of regular normal language along with technical language. All right. And there should be a report which perhaps will be meant for the outer world, for the general public, if required, which will be more for a general audience who's interested in understanding research finding. And most of that, the simpler version of the report can be very non-technical in nature. All right, so writing style is something that you can verify. You can actually learn from the different articles that are coming out, reading different dissertation reports, reading different research reports. Researcher gets an idea about how or in what manner to develop the writing style. It's a matter of practice. It is not about copying and pasting from Google, but it is about writing on your own, drafting, redrafting, 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 and perhaps going to the third and the fourth and the fifth draft. Finally, when you come to the final draft, to put on that draft as the final report. And why I said no copying from Google and all that, because you remember plagiarism check, you copy any sentence, paragraphs and all that from Google, it will get reflected in the plagiarism check, and it will say that your report is similar to so and so publication. So any research report which has a plagiarism, there are different companies and universities which will indicate different levels of similarity percentage. So in a plagiarism check, normally the similarity percentage allowed is around 5 to 10%. All right. Again, 0% similarity is very doubtful. It is not possible that you will have something which is not similar to any written report. In management science, it's going to be very, very difficult. So 100% similarity is absolutely copied item, which is like it's really copied. It's nothing is original. At the same time, 0% is also not good. All right, 0 or 1% is also like, it's like cutting it too thin. So something like 5 to 10% is something that is allowed. And then the plagiarism check report, the report coming out of the plagiarism software is also supposed to be attached along with the research report, especially for research reports meant for academic degrees. That is, before you get your MBA, if you're submitting a project report, they will ask you to, the university will demand a plagiarism check report of your project report to be attached along with the main report. All right. And even if, for example, during the drafting stage, you do a plagiarism check through authentic software, never do plagiarism check on the web, on the internet through the free software. What will happen is they will capture free software. Nothing is free in life, right? So they will capture your content, and it's your own content later when you put it in the official, plagiarism check softwares, your own content is likely to reflect back to you as a copied content. So never ever use interim period, never use the free softwares in the internet is what we advise students. So coming back to the point, as part of getting your degree, for example, MBA, you would be required to submit a project report, a dissertation report, and each of these reports will need to have the authenticity of the originality of the report in the form of a plagiarism check report, which itself must be attached at the end of the main research report. So it will indicate what percentage of similarity has come in. In the process, when you are doing the plagiarism check and you find, for example, the plagiarism is high, say 30% plagiarism has come in to a draft of a research report you are checking. You have a way in which you go back and find out where all are the similarity coming in. Is it because of the way you have structured the language, this way you have structured the paragraphs? All of that will be indicated. You can do the corrections. All right. The other thing is never ever use white spaces and all the tactics which many of your well-meaning good friends might be telling you to do in order to cheat the software. Nothing works. The software will check and will find out everything that you try to use in an unethical manner to outsmart the software. So never use any such things. That software will report it to the university saying that such and such report has been found to be using certain special characters, certain special ways in which they wanted to avoid the plagiarism check. If such things are found, the university can penalize the student by rejecting the report. And even if in future such a report is generated for a student whose degree has been given, the degree can also be revoked, which means the degree can be cancelled because of the unethical means which is practiced by the student in the dissertation report submitted by the student for the degree. So never ever try to do any kind of plagiarism or any kind of unethical thing in the plagiarism software in order to get a result. It will not give any kind of good outcome. So writing style is something that you need to start drafting, you need to start developing by practicing. practicing to write on your own. Use grammar check softwares and all of that if you need. You can take the help of an English teacher. If you need to have an English teacher to guide you as to how, whether the sentences are correct and the paragraphs are correct and all that, right? So basic, simple, correct English is required. We don't need very high level English language requirements, but you should have simple, correct English to be used for writing the reports. So report preparation and presentation, we will be continuing into tomorrow's class as well, but this is the structure. So basically what is happening is that the problem definition, data analysis, interpretation, all these steps must be coming out in the report. So pre-report writing activities would be all of these. Subsequently, when you're writing it, everything should be coming into the research report. And this basically gets reflected in the form of a chapterization. Like I said, research report, chapter 1 will be introduction kind of a thing, right? Which says why this research was conducted, why this particular title, right? Tomorrow I'll show you a sample report of a research report that has been done. So chapter 1 basically will talk about that. Chapter 2 will be talking about some secondary data or review of literature. Third chapter will be about research design. Fourth chapter will be about data collection analysis or data collection, and the next chapter will be data analysis and interpretation, and last chapter can be conclusions. But before and after this also there are some preliminary pages, title sheet, declaration sheets, plagiarism report sheet, all of that, which we'll look at later. And the end of the research report can be references and bibliography. All right, so we'll stop today here, and if there is no question, you can let me know if there's any question right now. Otherwise, if there's no question, we can proceed into tomorrow's class. Any time you have a question in the meantime, you can always put in your question inside the LMS as well. So thank you so much for joining in on time, and thanks so much for coming in and attending. Please let me know if there's any doubt that you have, and we will continue to be linked on in we'll meet tomorrow. Thank you.